With the death of the Queen, Liz Truss and her, well, quite frankly, awful government have got a bit of a reprieve. You see, they had just announced moments before the death of the Queen their probably defining policy of the Truss administration. And this was her energy package. This was the package that was going to help people out during the energy crisis. And as I have said quite a lot of times, this policy is going to become incredibly toxic for them very, very quickly. Because, first of all, it is not enough, it is not targeted. And when people will need more help in maybe a couple of months' time, they are going to be very, very reluctant to offer more help. And of course, that's not to say the fact that businesses just were not even included. Where was the help for businesses? Well, that'll be coming in about 3 months' time. By then, as we've said, for many businesses, that could be very, very far too late for them. And especially SMEs and macro businesses as well, this could be disastrous to many local economies as they try and batten down the hatches and prepare for what will be an incredibly bad winter for them. And as a result, I think we are looking at some very, very hard times ahead. And I've said it before, I think this all kicks off in November. If you look at all these things, all these crises, you know, it's unbelievable when you think about the number of crises that we have in the UK at the moment, but they will all come together. And I think November is when it will hit. November is when it will all kick off, and I can't tell you what the trigger will be, but something will go, and that'll be it. And we'll be seeing mass demonstrations, maybe mass strikes, maybe even a general strike, as people have been talking about. It's possible. It's very, very possible. And yeah, where things could go from there, who knows? Who knows? But don't worry, we'll be here to cover it when that happens. So to make sure you are always there to see when that happens, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So on with the story today, and this comes from the Yorkshire Bylines with the title of Social Unrest Brewing, as the government's response to the cost of living crisis fails to deliver. What we said from the moment it first arrived. And you could see, if you were watching the House of Commons when Truss was announcing this, there was a lot of tension. There was a lot of anger. But then, obviously, in comes the death of the Queen, and there's videos pointing it out of like the change in the hall. And like I say, now the government has a bit of a reprieve. But make no mistake, that anger is not going to go away, and it is going to come down on Liz Truss and her government like a ton of bricks. So, Boris Johnson's very pompous and intellectually dishonest farewell continued the lie that the war in Ukraine has caused a spike in energy prices. It hasn't. It is an external shock, yes, but it is wrong to lay the blame squarely at Vladimir Putin's grotesque invasion. We knew the price of gas and electric would go up in January of 2022 before the invasion even happened. And it will get worse under Truss's plans. Weep for Britain. Truss's proposed solutions to the cost of living crisis are a disaster. And oh boy, what a disaster show they are going to be. In the days after the voting ended in the Conservative leadership election, it was interesting to watch some Tory MPs who had previously bemoaned the cost to the taxpayer for furlough. One of the government sources briefed the Times in May of 2020, complaining that people were, quote, addicted to the scheme. Now, the new Prime Minister has announced a £130 billion package of support for the energy companies, which has been described by the media as a price freeze. That's £60 billion more than the entirety of the furlough scheme. All of it, the whole ball of wax. Think of that. The energy bosses are going to jump off a cliff, and the government is going to provide a big fluffy pillow of pound notes for them to land on. So, what's the big plan that the government has in mind? Put simply, the Tories have gambled on a short term growth spurt encouraged by tax cuts, specifically a cut in VAT and the scrapping of green levies. However, there's just one problem: it's all mythical thinking. And it really is mythical thinking. Like I say, when we'll get into some of the stuff they've been proposing. But this is what the Tories have been planning for ages. Remember, the Brexiteers and the ERG are now fully in control of the government, and they are going to propose all this magical thinking that they've been saying and spouting off since 2016, even before that, going all the way back to Britannia Unchained, and even before that, of this crazy libertarian right-wing fantasy that they want to put in. They are now going to go full speed ahead for. So back to it. Cuts to the VAT can, in the right circumstances, be an incentive to the private sector. Alistair Darling renewed VAT in November of 2008 to tackle the impact of the 2008 banking crisis. But unlike then, the proposed new cut in VAT does not follow 10 years of rising living standards. The economy has flatlined due to the triple shock of austerity, Brexit, and the pandemic. And the Conservative plan, now 12 years old, is to engender a private sector bonanza by redirecting the public sector spending. And tax and welfare has been a dull, dismal failure. It's left a nation poor, penniless, and hopelessly vulnerable to external shocks to the economy. The government is now gambling on a short-term bounce in the economy that will be enough to carry people through the winter. But inflation is rippling through society and entrenching inequality in the system. How are people going to start new businesses if banks aren't lending customers money? How are high street shops going to continue trading if people are siphoning off their money into saving accounts or into the pockets of energy firms, instead of spending this money in their shops? It's a recipe for vape shops, charity shops, and Poundland outlets popping up on every high street town and town centre in the land, but not for growth. This is the crux of the plan. That really is the crux of the plan, that they are entirely betting on that this short-term gamble is going to pay off. But the thing is, everything they are doing is based in a fantasy economics. They aren't taking inflation into account. They aren't taking in the 12 years of austerity that they themselves have done to the UK and what damage that has done to the UK itself. So this is an incredibly bad gamble, and it is going to backfire. This is why I've said this is such a toxic policy, and is going to come to define this entire government. So back to it. Then there are so-called energy price freezes, except it's not actually a price freeze. It's a bailout. No, it's worse than a bailout. It's a scam. As Richard Murphy from the East Anglia Bylines has noted, if the government caps prices of energy at £2,000, the energy companies will have to pay the shortfall. That will require government support. The loan required to reimburse the energy retailers with interest will fall on future customers. In other words, the public will endure a slight increase to energy bills for the next 10 years to pay off this loan. It's hard to put into words just how terrible this policy is. Not only is the bill eye-wateringly high, but it also asks future customers to pay for a crisis they didn't cause. The worst aspect of that is this: for millions of families and consumers, it won't do much good either. A £2,000 energy bill a year still represents a very significant increase on the annual energy yearly bill of 2021, which was previously only £1,339 a year. In other words, it is a scam. So who wins from this? The plans to meet the cost of living crisis are simply a disaster. Everyone loses. Customers lose, low income families lose, middle income families lose, pensioners lose, parents and carers with disabled children lose. Everyone loses. Well, not quite. There are two sets of winners: energy companies who may record profits during the pandemic, and people who own houses with many bedrooms, which, it hasn't gone unnoticed, include a lot of Tory MPs. Do you own a country estate with a lot of bedrooms? Don't worry, you'll be fine. The government will pay the energy companies to heat your house. And are you a single parent with a disabled child that can't afford that £2,000? Well, it's a sad day for you. There's not so much there's so much more to the cost of living scandal. Food prices, for example, have gone up 10%, while everyone is being distracted by the big, scary energy price rises. The government wants you to believe that this is a result of the international turbulence. And certainly Putin's activities are a contributing factor. But the real villain is greed. This isn't a cost of living crisis. We've got a cost of greed crisis scandal, and any attempt to shift the burden towards working people should be vigorously resisted. And I very, very much agree with that sentiment. We are living in not a cost of living crisis. This is a cost of greed crisis. And everyone is, quite rightly, as you pointed out, worried about energy. And, quite rightly so. But when you've got an increase in food prices by about 10%, there are going to be a lot of people this year, unfortunately, put in a very uncomfortable situation where they have to make a decision. Do they turn the heating on, or do they, afford to eat? And the Conservatives love to remind us that we live in one of the richest countries in the world. And not just the Conservatives, but all right-wing media pundits and, right-wing personalities out there love to say that. How on earth can you claim to be proud of that and then know full well that that is a decision millions of people this winter will have to take into account? But of course, this is part of their ideology. As far as they're concerned, those people who are having to make that choice, well, they're just lazy shirkers who, according to Liz Truss, don't do enough graft. And if only they would have a bit more hard graft about them, well, maybe they wouldn't be in that situation. And unfortunately, that is the ideology of the Prime Minister at this very moment in time. And it is going to do a lot of harm. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button on your way out. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page, my one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee, the YouTube one-off donation link as well, called the thank you button. And of course, there's the Pony Club down below as well, where you get badges, emojis, and whatnot as well to use in live streams. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.